Second.
Motion and second. Any other motions to be made at this particular moment? You ready?
Renee?
Yes.
Di?
Yes.
Bob?
Yes.
Brett?
Yep.
Mike?
Yes.
Alex?
Abstain.
Renee?
Yes. I voted twice. How many?
I crossed out the last
Got
one.
it. With that business being taken care of, next item on the agenda is approval of the board minutes. Any amendments, questions, discussion?
I make a motion to approve.
Second.
Chris, you ready?
Yep. Mike?
Yes.
Alex?
Yes.
Renee? Yes. Di?
Yes.
Bob?
Abstain.
Brett?
Yes. Oh, my bad. We'll get through this eventually, guys, sorry. We do need approval for the agenda as well, a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion?
Ready?
Yep.
Renee? Yes. Di?
Yes.
Bob?
Yes.
Brett?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
Alex?
Yes.
Okay, next action item is approval of the claims. There is a claim for Edie Long in this one as well. So we'll need two motions, one for that and one for the rest of the claims. Let's go the majority of the claims first.
So moved.
Second. Ready?
Yep.
Alex?
Yes.
Renee? Yes. Di?
Yes.
Bob?
Yes.
Brett?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes. Hey, one question though. What is the MS Learning 2250? What's that for?
The what?
Middle school learning tool, or is it?
Oh, it's a program, it's an online program that Josh would know about that.
Josh, what is that?
I'm not sure.
That bill I asked you about, that
The Zern.
Zern.
Oh,
It's
Zern,
Zern.
it's a special education math, additional, like supporting math program.
And what's Goodwill Industries Inc.?
That we have a student that goes there, you know, because kiddos are ours until they're 21, and she does a work,
Some work stuff there.
what would you call it, Shelley?
It's like an internship.
At Goodwill.
Okay,
We take her there.
gotcha.
Motion to approve the lawn service claim.
So moved.
Second. Any discussion? Chris?
Mike?
Yes.
Alex?
Yes.
Renee? Yes. Di?
Yes.
Bob?
Yes.
Brett?
Abstain. Next item on the agenda, informational items. Treasurer's report, any questions about any of those accounts? Or Chris, or anyone else? Hearing none, we'll move on. Policy review?
Probably nothing this month. Starting next month, we'll start incorporating those KSB policies. I hope get that policy committee established as soon as possible, and then they'll have time to review before we get to February.
Brenda, remind me, was that the merging of the two different
That was,
booklets or policies?
no, we have like 3 different policy versions within our book. It's going to be converting all to one legal counsel as far as their book. So there'll be some renumbering,
Got it.
some rechaptering, but then it'll at least be consistent.
Other questions, discussion? Administrative reports? Benjamin?
Good evening, everybody. For those of you that don't know me, I'm Ben Krebel. I'm the principal at the elementary. You guys have my full report. I will let you just look at that and let me know if you have any questions. The part that I wanted to point out is that almost every month at the bottom, I highlight strengths of a particular staff member or a couple people. So this month I wanted to highlight not just the strengths of the individuals of our fourth grade team, but just how well they work together collectively. So we had a little bit of a change this year. Mr. Kramer retired, and then Mrs. Christensen, who taught first grade, moved to fourth grade, and I'm just really impressed and proud with how well they're collaborating together and planning together, and just the rapport they have with each other. So I just wrote a paragraph about that, and then I always let whoever I write about know, hey, it's, kind of a kudos to you. And when I sent an email to the fourth grade teachers, they reached out to me and said, hey, by the way, we really, really would like it if you took some writing samples to the school board to look at tonight. And I said, sure, I'd be happy to. So I have these pieces of writing from our fourth graders this year. Names have been redacted, so nothing in this is private. Go ahead and you can look at these and pass them around. But all four of our fourth grade teachers and then their special education partner too are just really, really proud and happy with what they're seeing with what they're teaching and how well it's going with their curriculum implementation. So I think I just wanted you to lay eyes on that. Any questions from me?
Questions for Ben?
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Robert is not here.
Robert's not here, he's got an activity tonight.
His report is attached. Just feel free to reach out with questions. Shelley?
I'm Shelley Moss, I'm Director of Student Services. I've attached just kind of a little FYI on how special education funding works, since it's a little different than other funding for the district. I guess the only thing that to be aware of is we fund this year with reimbursement from last year. So we're always that year in arrears on that. And that birth to 5 funding for special education is only through grants. So that's why we utilize all of our grant money for the birth to 5 programming. If you have any questions about it.
Questions for Shelley?
Thank you.
Thank you, Shelley. Mark?
Hello, I'm Mark Kaminsky, I'm the middle school principal. I don't have much in my January report, just because we just got the second semester going. Just trying to get kids back in the swing of things. And I just want to point out just one informational item on there that we are advertising for the middle school, 2 new positions, middle school counselor and middle school music teacher, that we're hoping next month's board meeting I'll have more information in regards to that. So, other than that, if you have any questions, I'll be.
Questions for Mark? Thank you, Mark. Josh?
I'm Josh Snyder, I'm the Director of Learning here with Waukegan Public Schools. So a lot of the items on my agenda are carryover from December, but a few things to highlight. Communication will go out regarding spring ACT testing for juniors. That'll be March 21st. We'll send that out here in January, and then we'll follow up with additional reminders as we get closer to that test date. All accommodations for special education testing for ACT have been requested and approved. Perceptual survey information was also attached to my board report, so that's something that generally I won't discuss or go into great depth at this meeting. It's something for you to look at if you have questions going forward to ask questions about, but that was also attached. There's also open-ended responses with our perceptual surveys. Families, parents, students, teachers kind of fill out, it's like a culture and climate survey essentially. Those open-ended responses are analyzed at the building level, and then those the school improvement team will take a look at those, highlight some themes, things to consider going forward, and then that'll be shared back with the greater school community and public. So we'll post that on Facebook, on the website, whatnot, get that information out. And then lastly, this week is our federal audit for all Title I, Title II, etc. federal grants and programs. So that'll take place this week. So I'm finishing up just a few things to submit to them. It generally occurs every 4 years, so he assured me this year it was not going to be a 4.5-hour event like it was the last time we did it. So I said that's exciting. So any questions for me?
Yeah, Josh, on that survey, only, you give me, you said families surveyed 220 responses. Can you tell me the total families in our district? Same with staff, total staff members?
I can't give you the total families. I could get it, I can't give it to you right now.
No,
at this
I'm just saying
moment.
those are things.
I can
just
absolutely
For the
get-
next meeting, so,
Absolutely.
and then the only question, the high school students, 74 only responded?
That is what we had
Okay.
during that time, yep.
Just a number.
I don't know if it was because it wasn't shared frequently enough. We asked them to complete it in homeroom or warrior time, so I'm not sure
It just seemed like this, the
if the
numbers were really
message for
low.
all of those, I agree, but if the message for all that got out.
Okay.
So I've got a question too. So is this a pretty standardized survey that a lot of different schools put out? So we
Yeah, it asks questions about, I mean, I can just give you the survey if you'd like, rather than me trying to explain it specifically, but.
What I'm kind of getting at is how do we compare to other schools, you know, on if the questions that we're asking here are the same that we were asking in Hastings and stuff? Because a lot of this seems familiar to me for that reason.
Yeah, some of the, a lot of the questions are similar. When the, we do things a little different here, so the state does have a survey tool that they offer. Then they kind of have a collection point where they have essentially some access to that data. We use a lot of the same questions, but we do not provide access to the state for that data. When the state releases that across those comparison numbers for each of those questions, we would be able to take our local information and compare it to the state.
Okay.
But it's not gonna happen within a tool like it would if we had shared it that way.
And then the other thing that I would see is like last year's comparison at the same time. Do we have how things are comparing year after year?
Yeah, we generally give this survey every 2 years. Some of the questions are similar to the last survey, but we had made quite a few changes with some of the questions. So I can share the previous questions with you, but there's not an apples to apples comparison with each item. There should be going forward,
Okay.
but not right now.
All right, thank you.
Josh,
Yep.
do you tailor the questions at each school level? So are the questions you ask for elementary teachers, for example, different from what you ask of the middle school and high school?
They're relatively the same, only because there are some that are different depending upon what grade level or area, but a lot of them are the same because we want to be able to get the same kind of information across the buildings, just so that we can identify, you know, if there's something that we can improve upon, we want to make sure the language is the same, so the interpretation is the same. That allows us to also look at, is it a district issue, or is it something specific to a building? But there are questions specifically at the high school that look different than the elementary, because staff there, just their daily operations look different than they would at the elementary building.
Any other questions for Josh? Thank you, Josh. Vernon?
Good evening, everybody. I'm Vernon Galladay. I'm a high school principal. And Mike, just to go back to what you asked Josh with kids taking those, homeroom, we made an announcement, we sent out emails. I mean, I think it was open. The problem is it's voluntary, and you tell high school kids it's voluntary and a chance they can actually be studying or do whatever else they're doing that time. I think that's the challenge. I don't know if everybody heard that, but I think there's times where they're like, oh, I don't really have to, so I'm not sure how to, I mean, I know that there were 2 different times where we tried to make sure students had opportunities to take that during the day, so, and pretty confident that all our teachers went through and gave them chances to do that, so. I guess I'd just like to point out in my board report that, you know, NHS, we did finals baskets last semester again, and between community support, people that bought things here, that every one of our high school kids got a finals basket, which are just like a treat basket before finals on those finals days. Because of the weather, we moved them from 3 days to 2, so we squeezed those in there a little bit, which made it a little bit tighter, but I think it worked out as good as we could. That way we were able to get it done before Christmas. I thought that worked out really well. And also this Thursday, NHS is also doing a blood drive here at the high school, so. A lot of things going in February with registration for next year and getting ready to get started with those things. Questions for me?
So with, you said in here you purchased a wand metal detector
We did.
with, not with the funds from the
No,
baskets?
no.
Just
No funds from the funds that went in for the baskets went for the baskets.
Got it. So is that something that is going to be used for the school days, for
We
activities?
are gonna,
both?
well, we'll see what, I mean, what I was told was, sometimes if we have to search somebody that's in the bathroom, as opposed to hands-on, most of the stuff that we're looking for has a metal signature on it. And like, for like females, it's up in here, then it's easier for us to check to make sure that there's something there, cause we're just trying to make sure that it's safe and we know what's going on without, we're trying to be as hands-off as we can with those things.
Seems like that's something we should have a policy on.
We do have a search, we have a search policy, and as opposed to going through pockets and going and lifting up pant legs and all that, I think some ways that shows a little more, we already have a suspicion that something's going on, that makes us a little more hands-off and able to check those things and still be safe without putting our hands on students if we can help it.
So let me just follow up with that.
Yep.
So you want me, oh, and I set it off. I'm a female, you're a male, what's next?
Okay, well, the first thing I would ask you is there anything that's going on, what would set this off here? And hopefully we'd have a conversation and you would tell me, and I would either agree with that, and that's a real possibility, or maybe you would tell me and we could have that, we could move past that. If I question that, at that point where, since you're a female, I would probably call your parents and say, this is a concern I have in this spot. And I would also get a female staff member to probably, if I felt like it was necessary to go farther than that, or further than that, to go in a different room and have that search as opposed to me doing that search.
KSB is working on our policies. Brandon, do you ask them, I mean, I imagine other schools have to address this.
That's where I got this, I mean,
Yeah.
this is how people are doing in other schools.
Is it?
Oh,
Okay.
absolutely.
That's always been a tough part for us.
I know, it is.
In fact, most schools are going, there's still a lot of schools wanding people when they come in the building, there's people going through metal detectors, sometimes when you go to games in the state, there's all kinds of places. One of the things with things like vapes, other contraband that's going in the bathroom, that when you're coming out and they're putting it in places that you better know for sure it's there. This is one of those ways to be not as invasive. We're not gonna go, I'm not gonna come wand you as a student if there's not a real suspicion that something has happened.
Yeah, I guess the wanding isn't the concern, it's that what's next. And I
Correct.
could see that being,
Well, I think at that point, when it gets to where a place where I'm uncomfortable, and I'm uncomfortable a lot talking about some of the places that we're talking about, parents will be involved with that after that place.
and so that you will keep that student in your sight
I'm gonna have to,
until
yes.
you can get a parent here.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
So, and at that point, if we're really having trouble, we might call law enforcement in that, if that's, I mean, this is, I would expect this to be a real infrequent issue that I'm not expecting, I mean, it might set for a long time, but, there's been some instances that would help, and that would have sped that process up a lot for us. And sometimes a little nudge is all you need to get the truth, so, and that's all we want, make sure that this is safe and that kids can tell us the truth, because,
And we do reach out to a lot of different schools, trying to get, because they're having the same problems. So we're always trying to get ideas on
Sure.
what we're trying to do, and we've been having those conversations on, what are the best procedures for if this does happen. So we're trying to get that one, so as soon as we get that one, we're gonna be able to kind of see how it works and just kind of make sure that we have our procedures in place with it.
Other questions for Vernon? Brandon?
Okay, all I've got for tonight is kind of a legislative tracker. The first round of bills have come back. I think the last date for bill introduction is January 18th. Some of them I'm going to highlight here specifically with education that we'll want to keep an eye on. There's a couple on consumption tax, to put that in place of property and income tax. FAFSA completion, there's one out there that would require each student to complete the FAFSA in order to graduate, making it a graduation requirement. Prohibit.
Why would that?
I don't know.
Last year, Tony Vargas reached out to me, I don't know if that's who.
Yeah,
introduced
that's
the
who the
bill or not.
author is.
He, I told him how we were concerned that is taking it a step past where, because there's lots of kids that don't want that information out, don't want those things on there. He said that requirement's given that opportunity for kids that aren't lower income kids to go to school. We had a long I think that's what the idea was, trying to open opportunities for kids. Agree or not agree, I think when I had the long conversation, we talked, Mr. Harris and I talked to Senator Vargas in my office last year for a while, and told him our concerns with that. But that's what him coming back was, is that it's gonna open opportunities for families that don't necessarily haven't went to school and don't understand what benefits there are there.
Another one, prohibit interlocal agencies for education. There's one that increases term limits from 2 to 3. Remember, several years ago, they instituted term limits at 2. Now they're looking to expand that back to 3. One on there that eliminates the State Board of Education. Essentially what would happen is the governor would appoint a commissioner, and then whoever's within that cabinet of the commissioner would then be responsible for any of the duties of the State Board of Education. Parents and academic transparency / choice, there's a few bills on there. The transparency of curriculum, don't really have any concern with. We will share that at any time. Where I think it gets a little bit fuzzy is when it comes to standards. If parents have the option whether to exempt a student from a standards-based curriculum or practice, how do you make up that difference where the state is telling you that all students have to have this stuff, and then the legislature's coming back and says they can choose whether they do that stuff or not, but yet will be judged on the test results around those standards going forward. I don't know how they rectify that quite yet. And then there's going to be a ton in school finance, from completely overhauling TIOSA to slight modifications to this consumption tax. There's a lot at play there, so I will keep you up to date as best we can. If you want a summary of all the education-related bills to date, I do have a brief summary from NCSA. Understand that's a working document as this continues to move forward. Any questions for me?
I don't see any communication items. Audience comments.
I'd like to congratulate all of you folks. Over the past 5-6 years, I've never seen so many lies, obfuscation, attempts to avoid the public input, and the public vote. You few people here chose to disenfranchise, in an un-American act, every taxpayer and voter in the Saunders County, because you all know better. I think what you're doing is illegal, and I'm going to sue you as soon as I find an attorney. I don't think it will stand scrutiny, I don't think ESU two has any standing under the law. There's 3 pages of Nebraska law that relate to the function of an ESU two, and not one of them is to build another school district a school. Secondly, I got a minute left. I have it on good authority that you better redo this bid. You've got one bidder on most things. I think schools in many cases are required by state to have at least 3 bidders. You may have an overrun. I know right now you've got a $5 million overrun on your bid by the time you get done. If you don't believe me, start asking questions. What if it's $10 million? One bidder, you have not given enough time for the construction community, for the other people to bid. So you're in a big hurry to go nowhere, and all this is done without any public scrutiny. You guys are being totally irresponsible. Put me on record, this school, if it goes through, is going to be way over 10 to 25% of what you're planning.
Other comments?
I'm Bob Barney from Ithaca. I've been here before. There was I should follow the meetings more closely, but there was a problem, something on some government monies that it wasn't filed right with them. I don't know if it had to do with COVID or what. I don't know if that federal money ever come to the school or got satisfied, the bidding or whatever it was on, I don't know if it was on the HVAC or something like that. You remember anything about that, Mr. LaValle, or not?
Yeah, I do. I can talk to you after the meeting.
Okay. That's why I just like an answer. Then another thing is, I was wondering with this new interlocal agreement and going ahead with this school building plan, are there going to be any meetings for the public to ask questions on, if we run into financial problems, how this is going to get handled, if we stay under the $5 at the state level or what have you? So I just wonder if there's going to be any kind of meetings maybe in your theater or whatever over here so the public can ask you questions on your going ahead with this building project. So that's another issue. Then I don't know, on this interlocal agreement, and I think it was 2021, the legislature realized that ag is paying too much of the bill, especially on these building projects. So there was LB2 that passed. And this bill will allow, if a bond issue is passed, ag land will be valued at 50%. Since you guys are going around this bond issue, we're going to have to pay it 75% of value, like we do normally. But there was the senators realized that ag is paying a big share of this tax burden in the state. So anyway, I was concerned about that. I didn't know if you guys knew it on the board here, or Mr. LaValle, if you knew about it or not. So the farmers in District 39 are going to end up paying a lot more if we had a bond issue going forward, would have been passed. What else? I guess that's pretty much it. I got questions for you basically, but I'd like some answers in the future here or what have you. So, thank you.
Thank you, Bob. Any other audience comments? Board committee reports. Anybody have any committee info to share? Had started not meeting in February. Next item, action item, district signatories. As it says each year, officers are elected. Generally in the past, we've been what?
President, Treasurer.
President, treasurer.
Yep.
Do we want to continue down that path? As president and treasurer being signatories for.
Any issue with you being gone?
You would need 2 signatures, not just one in the case that you need us to sign off on something, correct?
Right. Chris, accurate.
Well, what we do is we have a stamp, a signature stamp. Every check has to have 2 signatures. So all these invoices that you
Yeah.
vote to approve, those get stamped with both the signatures. We can't write any checks without 2
Sure.
signatures.
Is there ever an opportunity would arise that you would need somebody to come in and physically sign it?
Not anymore. It used to be that we would get a check from the county treasurer, and then Brett would have to come in and endorse those, but now they're automatically deposited.
That's fine.
Any further discussion? Motion?
I'll make that motion.
Second.
What's the motion?
That the president and the treasurer are the 2 signers for the banks.
I'll second that.
Okay, now I reordered everybody, so you'll be in order. Bob,
Yes.
Mike,
Yes.
Di, Alex,
Yes.
Renee. Yes. Brett,
Yes.
and I'll make a motion to appoint Brandon O'Valley and Chris McCorney as authorized representatives of the district to sign paperwork and contracts.
Essentially what that does, like e-issue contracts, anything with MCL or VBH that you guys have approved, either Chris or I have the ability to sign that to keep things moving forward, but it wouldn't be without authorization of the board.
Second.
Discussion? Questions? Chris?
Renee? Yes. Brett,
Yes.
Bob,
Yes.
Mike,
Yes.
Di. Yes. Alex.
Yes.
Next item, board committee assignments. You have a copy of last year's 2022 committee assignments. We need action on that tonight, if somebody
Not
wants to
necessarily.
before,
No.
and take care of it in February.
Yep.
With everybody?
Yeah.
Yeah, just
Communicate
email
with
me.
Brett. One other thing to point out is there is not a committee on your listed sheet, but for that interlocal agency, we have 3 representatives on that board. They were Brett, Renee, and Laura. Laura being off of that, we're gonna have to at least find that replacement, assuming Brett and Renee continue.
Can I ask a question about the committees? What is the expectation or responsibility of the board members related to the committees? And I ask that, so for example, I've been on the National Honor Society Committee for 2 years, never had a single communication with anyone at the school related to National Honor Society, never attended any of their events because I didn't know when they were. What's the purpose of a committee? They aren't doing anything.
That's a great question. I removed 2 or 3 of the committees because I think our committees are in policy, but we had 2 or 3 committees, I can't tell you, a couple, 3 years ago, that never met, never did anything, so we adjusted policy, so those committees didn't exist. I don't have a good answer for National Honor Society. I've not been a part of that. There'd be 2 options to specifically outline what that individual is responsible for, or remove it because it doesn't function.
Well, is the expectation that we as the board members reach out to somebody at the school related to National Honor Society? Or is the expectation that a teacher or administrator reach out to the board members when they're on a committee related to a specific activity?
To me, it would make sense for teacher or administrator to reach out, though I'm not sure that, and I can't answer this, Vernon's been 2 or 3 years, but we haven't had an administrator participate before, or a board member participate before, have we?
We haven't, I don't know, now we have changed our sponsor in the last year or so, so that would make a little bit of a difference, but maybe a board, if there was a question about something or somebody that, I mean, I don't know that we have anything in our bylaws, National Honor Society bylaws that, I don't know that a sponsor would know to reach out to a specific board member, so, cause I'll be honest, I just heard about this right now, so. So maybe in the past, if something had happened, and there was something, or maybe we need to, clarification from the board, I don't know. We could, I'm open to whatever that would be, I just don't know what that is right now. And I'm positive Mrs. Forbes is now our National Honor Society sponsor. I'm sure she doesn't know that there's a liaison on the board that she's supposed to talk to right now, so.
Right, and if it's,
Right,
I don't know the expectation either for me as
Right.
a board member slash committee member.
I,
I think we need to get clarification.
Okay,
yes,
I think that would be
I
great.
will provide that.
I believe
Yep.
I reach out to Ally and Ben when we have Head Start meetings. They seems pretty simple. Including for draft some guidance and policies. Other questions? Okay, 7.3, discuss, consider, and take any necessary action on the bid package proposed by MCL for the renovation / construction project at the middle and high school.
All right, MCL BDH, you guys are up.
All right.
Where do we start? Do you guys have questions? We sent over bid package amendment 1 last week. Haven't received any questions, so we can start with questions on the amendment 1 package itself, anything that's in there. Maybe that's easiest. We do have some more information on bid package 2 that we did receive bids last week on, if that helps with the decision. Bid package 1.
Well, and I think maybe starting with the bids for bid package 1, and for the benefit of everyone in our audience, maybe you can walk through bids. Did you get more than one? Did you only get one? What broad categories did you get more than one in?
Sure. So the ones that I've sent over for recommendation, maybe we'll just focus on those since those are completed and sent over.
Can you speak up a little bit, please?
Sure. Starting with the precast, architectural precast, so 2 bidders, Core Slab and Enterprise Precast. Basically, typically we'll see those 2 guys bid all of our projects that have precast. Usually don't have a 3rd bidder, just because there isn't as many of those guys that do that, but.
It was though also sent out nationally to Moline and a couple of other precasters. I can't think of off the top of my head, but it was sent out to multiple people, and those are the 2 that we got bids back from.
And did we have an unusually short amount of time for the bidders to respond?
Longer than normal.
Longer than normal? What
Bid
is,
package 1 was, what was the dates? Was it 2 weeks or a little more?
I can tell you here.
2 weeks is the typical, I would say, once we send out a notice that there's a code on the street per se. We definitely weren't less than 2 weeks. Bid package 2 was longer than 2 weeks,
okay.
almost 4, but just because of the holidays and stuff that happens during the holidays.
And so are you recommending the low bidder on that one?
I am recommending Core Slab structures on that one, not necessarily the lowest on this particular scope, mostly because of schedule and availability to get into their bed to make it.
Okay.
I've been verbally promised bedtime by Core Slab to get precast when I need it. Enterprise, not so much, so.
Okay.
This is kind of a good one to start out. Most of the time it will be your low. I'll tell you why it's not the low if it isn't. This one is based on schedule, which is money.
And what's the delta on that?
And the
I
bid,
can't- Yeah,
right around 28,000.
I know at our last meeting, you guys had talked about you were gonna get it out into that other website. What's it called?
Construct Connect,
Okay, and that did get out?
Yep.
So everybody,
and then they blasted out the I² foot and.
to everybody?
Yeah.
Okay.
Are all the steps, length of time, putting them on multiple different sites, I mean, is that pretty standard? Or are we doing less or more than what you guys typically do for, not just a school, but just general
Sure.
practice?
Pretty standard.
Pretty standard.
Yeah.
I would even offer the fact that we're bidding out certain scopes of work to take advantage of schedule because of longer lead times, critical path, even working with contractors like MCL, that's pretty standard to break these out. That's why we're talking to you about these certain scopes tonight, is to get ahead of the game, to get everything by the spring, by the critical path timeline that we needed. So that process is pretty standardized as well, to kind of add on to what you're asking, Alex.
Want to kind of keep walking us through?
Sure, moving on to reinforcing steel, so 4 bidders on reinforcing steel. Recommending Concrete Industries for the reinforcing steel package. They are the low and are close. They're a sister company of Apollo Steel, who is actually gonna get awarded the structural steel package as well, so 2 separate contracts that would be, but kind of sister companies working with the same project manager has an advantages too. And they did offer a $2,500 discount if they were selecting both packages. That's factored in the number. Moving on, structural steel, so 3 bidders on structural, Apollo, who I just mentioned, Cattleman and 4G. Recommending Apollo Steel on that package, based on the number, and I know they're capable. It could meet my schedule. And on the erection, so erection includes precast and steel erection. We had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 bidders there, recommending Plus Sketch and Plus Sketch, based on a low bid that was full scope.
Did you send out a comparison of that one? It seems like this is all I got was their.
I've sent 4, so you should have those 4.
Okay. I missed that.
I can send it, maybe I attached the wrong thing, but I have that one to send to Randy.
And those were the major scopes in this?
Those are the ones that are 100% complete. I'll have more probably Wednesday with a couple meetings with some guys, but there are more in bid package 1 that you need. So typically how this would work on a typical job, and the way this contract reads, I'm gonna make a recommendation. Here's the scope sheet. 14 days expires, I don't hear anything. I'm allowed to start writing contracts based on there's no, raise your hand, I don't want that guy or whatever. 14 days is quite a bit, once I'm starting to buy out guys. If you need 14 days, we could probably make that happen. What we can't have is have to wait for board meetings every time we're approving this contract, as I go through the buyout process, we're gonna lose too much time. So like when I sent those to Brandon's forwarding them out, clock kind of starts 14 days. Let me know if you have an objection or a question on those, and then if not, or we can work through questions, then if amendment 1 isn't signed and in place, then I would start writing formal contracts at that point.
Now, you're not still getting bids on bid package 1?
No.
You just haven't had the time to go through them and
Right.
get them to us?
We went through them, it's going back and calling each one of them and going through every scope, making sure they have everything and comparing them, make sure we get them apples to apples to where we know we're getting the best price from them for all the work, basically.
So if you haven't had the chance to go through that process yet, but we're locking you into a GMP,
And that puts us at risk if they end up going over.
right, okay, and
Yeah,
we're ready?
we're comfortable. Yep.
Okay.
So from the specs and from what these bids came in, where does it sit overall? From
Bid
the top-
package 1 or bid package 2?
Bid package 1,
Compared to budget?
yeah.
Same message, $400,000 under DD budget for the scopes, for just breaking out bid package 1 scopes.
I thought it was a little more.
And then broadly, how did bid package 2 come in?
Good. So, kind of combined effort, getting all the allowances, not getting into too much detail, we're tracking close to 800,000 under budget of what are the available funds for the project.
So 1.2, where are we?
Well, that
there?
includes the package ones. Same.
Oh, 800.
Yep, 800 total.
So we're under the budget that we've set then at this point if we got 800 back.
Correct. And that includes carrying some design contingency still that we may not. These are all separated items that we'll track and spend as we all see fit to approve. But carrying a construction contingency, that's normal, I think probably at 2.5%, 3%. Carrying material escalation just to get through the buyout process in case we run into something. But at that point, if we don't need that, that money frees up too. You know, it's $890,000 in that. And then we did break out, because the contract dictates an owner contingency, a separate owner's contingency, that we put 100,000 in, which would be basically for whatever you wanted to use it or not use it for.
So I have some questions on that. With the GMP, the contract does not allow a design contingency or a material escalation provision in here. Per the terms, there's a construction manager contingency, there's an owner contingency. If we decide to put one in, we have to decide what we want that to be.
Mm-hmm.
But at the GMP phase, those other two really need to be out.
I would highly recommend they stay in, based on past experience, but.
Well, here's the problem. There's no contract provision that says how they're handled. Who gets to spend it? What's the approval process?
Sure.
Right? I mean, the contract does not contemplate when we're at the GMP phase that those things are anywhere in here. Design should be far enough that there should not need to be a design contingency. Material escalation, you know, that becomes the contractor's risk. That's why we go to the GMP and lock in that price. So those are two things the contract does not even address. There is no way for us to handle those. So I can't approve those items in a GMP proposal.
Okay. I would.
And that's just my position. I'm
So
following
if
the
you don't
contract
have
here.
designers, so contractually, then every scope thing will be change orders, there'll be a lot of change orders if we don't carry a design contingency to cover some of that stuff.
Yes.
Which is, if that's what you want, we could do.
Well, and I think that then that goes to BVH, which is, we're pretty far down the road. Why do we still need to be carrying a design contingency?
And we would agree with what Brian said. We'd recommend holding that design contingency. And we've kind of labeled it many different ways on projects. It can be design contingency, it can be owner contingency, it can be, you know, below the line as far as what's in the contract and what's an owner-held line item. But anytime we work in existing buildings, there's always gonna be those unforeseen conditions. Something that you open up a wall or a ceiling, or the fact that we are heavily renovating the entire shop area for new locker rooms. There's gonna be some unforeseen conditions, so we'd always recommend the owner at least hold some contingency aside for that.
And is there an expectation that we're also going to have another pool of money in the next GMP amendment that's also going to be for design contingency?
Right, so the next GMP amendment, what our preference would be is to capture 1 and 2 and combined all in. This is the final GMP. So you'd see like the same, you know, the numbers, they grow because of the package too, but there'd be one more amendment that sets the final GMP and includes all of the package ones.
And why can't we just use the change order process, which is actually a defined process in the contract? That's actually the way this was drafted. If we run into things that had not been designed and priced, then we need to go through the change order process. So we as a board stay on top of, okay, what's changing? Where's our money going? So we're not leaking money out of some 100 or 200.
All of this, no matter where it comes from, would be logged. Logs for any of the contingencies. So if you're gonna wait for a board meeting, I've been through renovations, I've been through school additions, to wait for board meetings to approve some of the changes that need to happen will cost you time and money. Which is why we prefer there's a committee that can make some decisions or recommendations to the board quicker. Because at some point, we're gonna have something, if we don't go or have a decision by next week, then we're gonna be delayed or idle or whatever, and then the money starts adding up.
And I think Brandon, under this contract, has some of that authority.
Sure, which should be, yeah, I do.
So
And
certainly,
then carrying it within the budget, very transparent, logs, is just cleaner in my opinion. And nice that we deduct from and log it as we go, rather than change order and adding to the top every time something comes up.
And in that log, I mean, nothing is spent without asking for probably Brandon's approval before we spend that money and explain why we're spending that money.
Yeah, so a typical process would be, we'll meet with MCL every 2 weeks on site, or as needed if something comes up. We would issue a drawing or proposal request, they would price it, then that would be reviewed with the group, the committee, and that would be either thumbs up or thumbs down. Sometimes we negotiate price based on scope. So between Eric and his team and us, we would vet the numbers to make sure that any proposal, but MCL would keep that log and everything would be tracked against the contingency. Anything that's not used would go back to the district.
Correct.
no, and I get that, but again, there's a change order process.
Yeah,
There is no process in the contract for a design contingency, because at the GMP phase,
yeah.
we're supposed to have all of those unknowns out, except the unknowns that are unknowable.
Yeah.
So, yeah, you could just label it owner contingency. It's gonna go through the change order process either way, right? I mean, and then once you guys get past your risk points, they credit that value back to the owner.
Yeah, if you would prefer, it goes just into the owner, because there's not really an amount set for owner's contingency.
Right.
We could put money in there,
Okay.
use the contract language as it's spent. It's basically up to you how you want to spend that, or if we spend it, your approval, then we could look into do something with that.
So effectively, you're just talking about, because if you have to get approval before you can spend it and put it on the log, that's effectively a change order. I mean, what's the difference?
One has an AIA contract, and the other one is going against the contingency.
Right.
You're exactly right.
But either way,
It's a
if each one
formal
has to be
process.
approved
Yes.
by someone.
But you don't need a formal change order to spend contingency.
Right, right.
A change order, that's a scope change that would maybe have a schedule effect, or something, would be a formal AIA change order that would be signature.
Okay. So I think,
Yeah, a good example of it is existing conditions in mechanical renovation, where we know there's things they're gonna run into above the ceiling that just aren't accounted for, and if and when they do, for them to keep moving that day, if there's already a set contingency that's assigned just to mechanical things they're gonna run into in the ceiling, then they can just debit that and move on. I mean, it has to be approved by.
Right, so anything, the new construction phase, it's all new, you shouldn't have any of this.
There will be details that need to be
Well,
ironed
obviously,
out
but-
that might add scope, but yeah, it won't be as much or as messy as the burnout for sure.
Yeah.
The renovation, it makes more sense. The new construction makes absolutely, I mean, it's new, guys. I mean, there's gonna be some, again, there are things you're gonna come up. But I think there should be very, far, far less of that we should have to even be talked about, because it's paying a lot of money for guys to design and build this thing. So,
at a minimum, again,
I-
there's nothing in the contract that allows for or provides a process for use of or carrying a design contingency. So that's my first objection. If we want to carry something, I think we put it in the owner contingency, because there is contract language that says,
Yeah.
here's how the owner contingency is handled. And we have control over that. Versus a design contingency where we would have to be making up the rules as we go, because there are no provisions for handling that in the contract.
so basically, if we have the owner contingency, they would bring us change orders. And then we would then, if they make a change order in the ceiling they didn't know about, that would come out, that's where the owner's contingency, where the money's at. Basically, the change order has to say, hey, we have to do this, this is why. And then we would,
Well, and I think we could, there's sort of a rough process in here where we could authorize Brandon in the scenario you're talking about. We can't just call off work for the day because we ran into something that was unknown. We can give Brandon some
Totally.
ability to keep this rolling without completely deviating from the contract process. And that's my concern, is just, we wanna not be, you know, a holdup when we don't need to be.
Right.
But we also need to be really good stewards of
Sure.
every dollar on this project. So I think as a board, we have to decide how much owner's contingency do we want. I assume you guys just put 100,000 in as placeholder?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. And certainly we would welcome, I would welcome a recommendation, I'm only speaking for me. But I think that money, I personally would be more comfortable if we move that into the owner's contingency and handle it per the terms of the contract. And we can give Brandon some authority up to some dollar amount. So they can just call him and not pull people off the project and wait for
That's
approval.
typical, but I've
Okay.
seen in the past as well, up to a certain amount, whatever that amount might be, to keep things moving.
And then the other one is the material escalation. At GMP phase, that's the point at which our expectation and when the contract is written for the number to go hard and the contractor to go at risk. So if you guys need to revisit, but part of the reason why you told us we need to approve this today is to lock in pricing. If we're locking in pricing,
I don't think, the last couple of years have been very atypical in construction industry material procurement. That's why we're suggesting to carry this, so we don't put ourselves in a situation that we need escalation money, it's bound to happen, and don't have anywhere to take it from. But if we wanna move it
well,
into
that's what,
something else,
that's what the construction manager's contingency is.
and that's fine, we can move it there. And that percentage will be higher, we can't exceed 5%, but we're gonna get close, which is fine with me.
I mean, again, that's something where
Mm-hmm.
there is no provision
Is that-
for
what do you
material
got right now?
escalation.
In bid package two's comparison for percentage, is it three, more close to three?
Three.
So I think we'd move it, stay under the 5, which is the contractual limit, and that's fine too, because then it would be used the same way as a construction business.
Right.
And I'd be okay with that, and we could read that.
Okay. Those were my primary
Okay,
concerns, is we just really need to get this back within the terms of the contract. So we have developed processes for how everything gets handled.
that being said, so we'll have modifications to exhibit A3, basically. Which I could probably get done tomorrow.
What's your recommendation on owner's contingency?
It's usually a percentage based. Because Trevor, you were holding 3% or?
I've now dropped.
Owner's just named in the contract that we have to carry one, or 50% of the construction contingency turns into owner's contingency, so
Yeah.
basically 100,000 was literally just a placeholder. It depends on what the owner might wanna buy with that money. It's completely your money to spend. We have allowances for a lot of this stuff that I've seen owner contingency spent on. So it's a little bit different, like they might put for FF&E dollars in an owner contingency. I've seen that in the past. This one, we have a separate allowance for FF&E.
Right.
It's basically whatever you would want, plus the other ones that we're looking into it.
And was your expectation that the owners, because I think anything that runs through the owner's contingency gets fee on it.
Correct, as it's spent.
Right,
yes.
so things that are procured by owner, we probably don't want to run through the contract because then we're just adding 2.45% profit. So anything
And
we
there
have to
are-
procure,
There are named allowances in the
Yes.
specification
Yeah.
that we actually put below our bottom line because it's not typical for us to carry that contract or get fee on it.
Okay.
FF&E being an example.
and that would be in bid package 2, or?
And we would leave that on, we
Okay.
would, for the overall budget, so we're seeing all the numbers, it would be part of that, but it'd be below our contract value and not included in our allowances, if that makes sense.
I kind of see where you're going though on this. The owner's contingency would also end up being moved below the line.
Right.
Right. So that we're not collecting any fee on any of the owner's contingency.
And that's fantastic, I don't think that's how the contract is written.
No, I think we'd want it in, and as we spend it, get fee, but It would stay above, just like a non-contingency.
Yeah, I mean, that's how it's written,
Right.
is, and so that's where we need to be cautious about what we run through the owner's
Right.
contingency, because per the contract, you know, it goes both ways, you're entitled to be on that. And so
Yeah, if
we
you have
just need
buying
to be-
power with maybe some CTET equipment or something, it doesn't make sense to run through me to buy it when you can have it, buy it, and then you're not getting my markup on it. Yeah, I mean, that's very difficult to.
So, and those are things that if they're currently being carried in the GMP,
But if you don't spend it, or wanted to do a deductive change
or,
order
right,
to pull it out,
we can do a change order.
we could pull it out, it's now in your pocket,
Yeah.
it's not in the contract, anymore. You can spend it however you want.
Right.
You can do that too.
Just a small thing, I went back on that email for steel precast erection. The only thing that's on there is Pleskotch's proposal.
Okay,
Yeah,
The comparison was not.
Yeah.
let me,
Yeah, that's the one.
respond and send you
Yeah,
the
that's
actual.
fine. I'll share it out.
If we're done with that line of questioning, prior to getting the bids that came in, you did some estimates, I assume, in-house to make sure that they came in at least close. How did we come out in comparison to your estimates?
Right, so we were talking a little bit, so big picture with bid package 2, which we just got bid package 2 numbers on Thursday, so Trevor's been hard at work since Thursday. Feeling those numbers out, getting some comfortable numbers and plugging them in to see how we are. Trending close to 800,000 under our last DP budget.
In any specific bids, did they come in higher than your estimate significantly?
Yeah, there are some pluses and minuses. I don't know what you mean by significant, but there are some pluses and minuses, and this document has the deltas.
Are there any that you might consider reletting the bid because that high number might be something that would come down?
2 of our biggest concern scopes actually came in under, so we're not really worried about some of the ones that are way over, and because we have good coverage there.
And then with regard to, this all kind of happened before I came on the board, so is this a good time for this? We've seen a lot of inflation lately, and there's projections that some of the construction stuff, some of those costs, materials might come down, and some have, and some have gone back up again. What are you
Our
guys experiencing in the field?
Forecasts, and we've been telling clients, every month you wait, it's costing you money. We don't see it coming down, it's leveling off, not going up as sharply, a lot of things. Some things are coming down, not everything. The overall cost of construction is still going this way, and it's not gonna come down. So if you wait, it'll be more expensive, I would say. And we've talked about the numbers per month of what we've seen on a project this size, what those dollar figures are, and they're the $300,000, $400,000 a month range when you wait on a project this size. No one has a crystal ball, but
Be
it's our
nice.
best, yeah, exactly.
Questions? Are we gonna wait for any further on the owner contingency? We don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, that's kind of talked about, but I'm not sure what we're going for.
I think to do the next version, they're gonna have to have direction from us. I think we need to decide what number we want them to put
What's a
in.
good owner's contingency percentage? 1%, 1.5, too much?
Well, we're at about 1% now. If we were to take the design contingency, you're looking at 300,000 roughly. If we took the design contingency plus what's currently labeled as the owner contingency.
So we reduce, so, let's get a little confused probably, but in our bid package 2, overall GMP that we're looking at, compare how we did against DB budget, we brought that design contingency down because of how far, now we're at 100% docs. So maybe we need to talk about that a little bit. There's gonna be a number that design contingency you're comfortable carrying. In our overall GMP, it's 218,000.
plus the 100,000 that we have for the owner.
Outside of the owner, right.
Yeah. So if we added those two together, that would be roughly 1%.
Okay, and so you're saying with what will come in as your second proposal?
And we can set those now, because there wasn't, do we have an owner contingency identified in this one?
You do 100,000?
So that could stay. Yeah, we roll the design contingency up, but overall, 219 is what we're figured for the entire package. So that had a little bit higher percentage rate on the package one than two.
So 319 total is what you guys were planning to carry in this for
Right.
design plus owner?
Yeah.
Which will not be owner,
Well, what?
which will now remain the owner as.
Yeah.
I think 3% design or slash owner contingency feels about right for the bid package one scope. So as we're kind of compiling numbers and kind of restructuring what's above and below the line, that 3% is, for this scope of work, feels the most appropriate,
So you're talking about 300 roughly?
roughly, yeah.
What does everybody think? The good news is if it doesn't, we don't spend it, it comes back to us 100%.
Yeah.
I mean, the numbers are what they are. We know we have a fixed dollar amount to get the project done.
We have a bucket. It's got so
That's
much
it.
money.
There will not be any more money coming into the bucket.
And if we get less of the bucket, we keep, stuff to go.
When you say 3% seems appropriate, is that based on past projects or?
Past projects, the scope of work, the size of each section of the scope, the site work, utilities, precast, just everything that's in package one, that 3% basically covers all bases.
But HVAC is not in bid package one,
Well,
right?
you
Just the elementary, and I don't anticipate, it's not.
No,
that's a separate
site
contract.
utilities, so
Yeah.
underground piping,
Yeah.
anything related to site. Everything interior of the building, mechanical, electrical, is part of bid package two.
So we have concerns that there could be $300,000 in just the limited bid package one scope.
Based on some of the site work, unforeseen piping, things that are buried in the site that we just don't know about. Our survey did not pick up. So that kind of thing.
So by bid packet two, we're saying 1%, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
So-
Yeah, but
So that'll get full.
Eric, what are your thoughts on that? I mean, HVAC is where we're ripping into things that we don't know.
That's gonna be the messiest.
I wouldn't have thought
But
we would have.
sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, I wouldn't have thought we would have had such a big number on bid package one. I would have thought it would come with the HVAC.
Yeah, I mean, you could carry that, right? You don't spend that, you
Yes.
carry that into it.
Yes.
Right, that's what I was
I would, yeah, I would anticipate a little higher contingency on impact to the 1%. Just for your structure, your tie-ins, your renovation component. But it's also a lot bigger number, right? So
What did HVAC come in at, by the way?
A little over 8 million.
And what were you carrying?
We're at 9, a little under 9, I think.
How long do we have to lock those guys in?
I've had conversations with those guys, because they're just getting 30 days,
Okay.
right? 30 days is probably the typical answer.
Is that what they put on the face of their bid was 30?
Yeah.
That they hold it? I guess we'll just have to do this again for number two and figure out what the right number is. That's the scope that scares me.
Yeah.
Perspective for me is, and I just said this to Bob, was in 2018 when we did the bond, what was the total square footage?
I don't remember the total.
90,000?
It was more than what we're doing.
Okay, 90,000, I think it's 90,000. And I think we're at 29 million or 30.
That was renovation and new construction.
And moving the football field and all this. We're doing less square footage. Way less square footage. And our budget is 42 million. So it's not gonna go down, guys. I mean, as long as, but I just wanna make sure, one thing I'll say is, we gotta get this out to the public so they can see it, what it looks like. So if that means at the next meeting with you guys, we have it here, what it's gonna look like, because nobody really knows. You showed up at the Greater Wahoo, was great. They left, but I think they wanna see it. So let's show them what our building's gonna look like.
I think that's something you guys could probably put a fly model.
But I guess I'm going back to my
something like
original
that
point, but
around.
it's not going down. So if
Right.
like you just said, it's leveling out, but it's not gonna do this.
Yeah. It's not gonna return to
And,
what
and just to
pre-pandemic
clarify,
construction costs were.
we have had open meetings and put all of those designs
Not really, we
on
have-
the board. Yes, we
No.
have. Yes, we
Well,
have.
but, have you seen some of them at the meetings you attended?
Absolutely. So it isn't like we haven't been open and shown them to the public.
Have we put a thing in the newspaper, what it's gonna look like? A redemption, what our school's gonna look like? Have we put anything on?
So typical, something that I've seen that's typical for schools is to have a tab on their website or whatever that is updates or photos. We'll have drone videos as we go
We
through
have not.
construction, and you can post that stuff. That's a good
It's a great
place for it.
'Cause
and anybody
these
can
as board
go,
members or taxpayers, you can say, hey, just go to our website, you can see everything about it.
and I can
My
provide.
brother
support
looked today,
that.
the reason I know it's not there, I was talking to EJ about it, and he said, hey, where can I see it? I said, maybe it's on our school website.
Right.
And it wasn't. Those are the things, guys, transparency, just get it out there. And if we get it on, if you have everything we need, you guys can help with that, get it out there on our tab, so somebody can click and they see everything from the meetings, it's all right there. And then there's no questioning what we're doing, what it is.
Yeah, we've actually started formatting a final set of plans, graphic plans, updating our renderings. So anything that we can help deliver and populate a website, we're more than happy to do.
Because everything we're doing is not extravagant, we're doing what we need to do.
Right.
Mhm.
And I think that's an easy sell, it's a need, not a want. We just have to make sure we
Yeah.
let everybody,
And that goes a long
understand
way.
what the
I've seen
need
it in
is.
other communities. You start a website with monthly construction updates, they get to see where things are going, what stage it's in, what it's looking like, and then a model goes a really long way. People can actually visualize and see what it's gonna be.
And Mike, that's a good point, because while some people have heartburn, I think there's gonna be a lot of people who are excited for this too. If they can start seeing things and seeing what the vision is and what this potentially would look like, so that's a great point.
but back to the bid package 1 and 2.
Yes.
The
I
percentages.
didn't mean to get off the subject, I just thought about,
So if you're not ready to sign, because we need to make some modifications,
Right.
and I can make modifications probably within a day or two.
when's the earliest we can get?
What we don't wanna do is wait till next
I know.
meeting
No.
to sign
Can
this.
we
if
make
we can avoid
some
it.
sort of motion, given the change that we're
Were we asking them to
authorize
make, and then the authority for Brandon
to sign
to,
off on that?
I think we can.
That way, we're not costing ourselves $300,000-$400,000 by wait till February meeting.
And one of the things that we're gonna be looking to do before, or at the February meeting, is put a committee together for this specific purpose, right? Is that one of the committees, is the building? committee?
It will be.
The
Yeah.
building committee will be, yeah.
Yeah, and that could be the committee that you work with to do the change orders and modifications in the contract and stuff. But right now, we don't have that in place.
We do have a.
We
building
do.
committee.
Okay, okay.
It
But
was-
now it's a new, but
Laura was
it's a
on.
new year,
Yeah.
so we'll have a new,
Who was on it?
it was Alex and I and Brett,
Yeah.
Oh, the building.
the building, yeah.
I'm not.
No,
No, you and Renee, you and I and Brett were on the building.
Right, and this is not a standing committee, this was created for the duration.
No, we have a
of the
buildings and
project.
grounds committee.
That's
Right,
all.
different committee though.
No, what he's saying is that could be the committee, that could be the.
Well, I was thinking there would be a specific committee for this. When I saw the buildings committee on there, I assumed it was for this specific purpose, or something like this.
This one is more of an ad hoc that's been working with
Yeah.
BH and MCL.
Yeah, so I would think that that committee could look at this, and as long as the language is consistent with what Renee is talking about, then you know, it would be something that we could approve and move forward with without having to come back together as a full board.
Because if we wanted to come back together, the earliest we can come back together is probably 2 weeks to get it advertised.
But I think your boss
Yep.
is 100% right. If we can enact the committee to act on our behalf of what the owner, owner contingency, how we want it in the contract, you get it back to us, we get together, we say, yep, looks great.
Well, it sounds like it could be, if we give them the right direction, it could be as soon as Wednesday, maybe.
And if we can just do Zoom versus needing to get, I can do that in the middle of the day too.
But I would actually, for me, if Bob wants to take my position, because this is contract legal, I'm not an attorney, he is. And I would feel more comfortable from that standpoint of having him replace me. I'm good with that.
I guess here's my only concern, but continuity, we've kind of gone through this from the start.
Right, but then-
Received the information.
but
How do we
normally-
bring Bob up to speed?
What I would tell you is, normally, the president doesn't usually sit on those committees. The board president, he's more the day-to-day with that, because I don't think, I'm just saying, he's got other duties he's gonna be doing as a president, that he could take Brett's or my spot. I'm just saying, if you're gonna deal with more contracts and stuff with MCL, I'm perfectly fine getting up to speed, and he can be my replacement for that.
Other than continuity. I don't care one minute.
Now, that is one of the appointments that we would be making in February anyway,
No.
No,
right? No?
that's a
Okay.
buildings and
Completely
grounds
separate.
committee, that's a totally
Oh,
different,
separate, okay.
that's the building itself.
Unfortunately, I didn't know the name of what we're talking about.
Yeah, it's a little confusing to a newbie. I don't have a problem being on that. I mean, we've got an attorney on there that's obviously been very thorough in her review of it, so I don't think you need a second attorney on that board, so I don't need to be on it.
You don't want, okay?
So we're back to the direction for these guys, so we can approve or not.
I still, what does anyone think on the owner's contingency? I guess that's the one thing.
Just for bid package one?
Yeah, the committee should not make that
Yeah,
by
no,
itself.
I agree, I think we should.
So if they wanna make it simple for this bid package, we can keep it
300?
at 300, whatever you,
That's.
bid package two,
Yeah.
we got a little more time to have some conversations to get it in there for the approval process.
Yes,
Matt recommended, I'm comfortable with that number.
Yeah, I would too, so put in 300
Okay.
for the owner's contingency. As long as it comes back that way, then we just need to.
So what-
make a motion.
we
We need a motion.
need to make a motion probably to
Yes.
give the authority of the building committee to
We
make,
need a motion to empower the building committee to approve bid package one
with the contract continue,
with
GMP
the
one.
contract,
GMP one.
GMP one.
GMP.
Why don't you just tell us how to say it?
Yeah,
And I'll second
let's
it.
cut out.
Go for it, Renee.
You can send it to me, email.
You and Rod did that anyway before, so now you go ahead and do it, and we'll say it. Make a motion to,
I make a motion to authorize the building committee, designated specifically for the construction project, to approve GMP one upon the revisions that we have discussed here tonight.
second that.
Discussion. Hearing none. Chris, please.
Renee? Yes. Brett?
Yes.
Bob?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes,
Di? Yes. Alex?
Yes.
Okay, if I can, before we move on, bid package two, we said there's about 30 days on those contracts. Next regular board meeting's 5 weeks out,
Okay.
how it falls. Do we need to schedule something before that specifically for that purpose?
It would be ideal, yes, so similar to this one, we should have a construction committee meeting to get into the weeds a little bit with bid package two stuff. And then from that, there's probably a recommendation to the board to approve the full GMP. What amount of time do you guys think, I mean, we need a couple weeks of just sorting through bids still and putting something for us to sit down. Did you say 5 weeks?
It's 5 weeks to the next board meeting. Because this is as early as, almost as early as we ever go.
Right. Just the way the calendar dates fall.
Yeah. Because it's February 20th.
And Bob and I, for your benefit, we did that before this one where we said we want more information here, right? We're not approving anything at that committee, we're just getting more details. So they can bring that back with the details we think maybe the board might want. Will you guys even be able to pull it together before 5 weeks? And vet your contractors and be comfortable going hard on it?
Whether they're all 100%, buyout's gonna take a couple months, it always does, so I won't be all the way buyout, but we will be minimally comfortable. Our risk numbers.
3 weeks enough time?
Can you explain the buyout log to them?
Okay, so buyout log, yeah, so I wanted to show you, and this is, as we get into the weeds, maybe I'll just share my screen.
So as he was saying, we're gonna go in there with what we're most comfortable with for the GMP. And he's gonna have a buyout log that's gonna be active and continually updated as we get each contractor signed on board after we get your approval. That will go on that log, and any savings from that goes to this log, and you guys can keep track of all that savings so that you know, at a certain point, like a quarter away or halfway through the school or through the build, you'll have that pot of money of, hey, what can we do with this to
So-
add on to our scope?
More of the transparency as I'm buying out contracts. Targeted value, this will all be on a log that we can review with committee. What the contract was actually written for, there's gonna be a delta, and that money will hopefully add up. There'll be pluses and minuses as we go through, just like any time, but creating another pocket of money that we have to spend however you choose, or we want to, but it's in the GMP tract. I mean, we just prefer to do it open book, obviously, so you can see it.
At what point are you guys comfortable though releasing that money out versus holding it to cover overruns?
There'll be
price
periods
escalation, et
of the
cetera?
contract, and I'll tell you, if you guys want to spend 200,000 of this pot of money, I am comfortable, we're past this risk. Set points, usually it's like 4 checkpoints
Okay.
that I'll do and say, yeah, here's $50,000, and I'm comfortable pulling this out of this, if you guys want to spend it, or deduct it, whatever you want. So we'll have a couple logs as we get into construction. The change log is the big one. Tracking contingencies, everything. Buyout log is another one.
So the only question I would about the back two would be critical path schedule and procurement. So does that influence, with 5 weeks, do we need to move shops prior to that to hit public
I would
schedule?
love to get electrical
Yeah.
gear, transformers are a big one, so I really need to have these conversations with those guys, get them going. They're not gonna spend any money within 5 weeks. Kinda like Tony talked about, letters of intent, our risk, and those discussions, I'm probably gonna have discussions with those guys and have to verbally award to get things moving in time. Just like I kinda did with precast and some other stuff. But I think we're fine, if it's 5 weeks and we have the same thing and I can release some contracts, then I think we're okay. Those scopes, I'm probably gonna send recommendations out in a couple of weeks, so that the 14-day clock starts, right, so. And then run it up against their next meeting. But there are certain things.
Yeah, we can move shops prior. to
Basically
the
mechanical, electrical are the big get that I really need to get, at least verbals going. They can get their project managers assigned to it and start talking about lead times and getting into my CPM schedule, so.
Yeah, I mean, if Tony's willing to do LOIs like he did GMP1.
Yeah, because I mean, honestly, 5 weeks from now, we need to meet with the construction committee in 2 weeks probably. There might be some provisions, there's things we need to get back, maybe one more time before it goes to the board. So 5 weeks is probably the soonest an actual amendment to the contract will be ready anyway, so I think we're fine. And we'll just move along, kind of get that one. I'll examine, we'll look at our schedules and we'll set a construction committee meeting. I'll get with Brandon and help set that up. It'll probably be in a couple of weeks. to review bid package 2 initial stuff.
So there's a motion and a second. Right? So we, for the, any further, Brett? Any further?
Any further discussion?
Ready?
Yep.
Renee? Yes. Brett?
Yes.
Bob?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
Di? Yes. Alex?
Yes.
7.4, discuss, consider, and take any necessary action on the lease renewal resolution for the Saugus County Saugus County Education Agency and Warren Public Schools. It's done on an annual basis, and times were renewed today.
So with that, within the original lease, which was approved last year around this time, that lease agreement automatically rolls over. Bob actually asked a really good question about it, whether it was even necessary to do the resolution this year. I reached out to Mike Rogers at Gilmore Bell. His response, the lease does have an automatic renewal provision as noted. In addition, the lease also requires the annual resolution simply to ratify and confirm the renewal, so there's no doubt about the automatic renewal, kind of a belt and suspenders approach is the way he put it. The requirement for an annual resolution was requested by the lender's council when financing was closed. So while it does automatically renew, it's probably okay to double dip and go on top of it with the resolution. as well.
Really automatically renews after this. So we renew it, then we really renew.
Yeah.
Make them tell us.
I need to make a motion to adopt the lease renewal resolution.
It is not.
I'll make a motion.
Second.
Any discussion? Chris?
Mike?
Yes.
Di? Yes. Alex?
Yes.
Renee? Yes. Brett?
Yes.
Bob?
Yes.
Any follow-up? Good to go.
To play devil's advocate, what if we just voted no? It was 3-3.
I don't think it would have had any
I don't
effect.
think it
We
would.
can't
It wouldn't,
overrule the
yeah,
contract.
yeah.
It's a strange
That's right.
contract.
Yeah, okay, that's why I was like, well, what if we did voted no? It wouldn't have mattered.
I don't think it would have mattered.
Yeah, I don't think so.
They would have just been belt, no suspenders with them.
The contract would have been terminated, but all the terms of the contract would continue for the rest of the proposed term of the contract. It's the strangest contract I've ever read.
Personnel resignations, hirings, Kendra Weber,
Weber.
thank you, will be resigning at the end of the school year for her. And unfortunately is leaving our district too. By her wishes. So.
Yeah, Kendra is moving with her husband. I think her husband is military, correct?
Correct.
He's getting reassigned, so she decided to go with him instead of staying here. Suppose that's okay. Also on there, and I apologize because it was a last minute notice or addition, Pam Trutna also submitted her letter of resignation. She's been doing a super part-time, I think it's .175 FTE for us. She's ready to truly retire and do other things.
What was she doing?
She was doing one day a week
She
title.
teaches Title I at St. Wenceslas.
Yeah.
It's something that she and I have been talking through for the last few years, and I mean, we were lucky to have her and very fortunate to have her, and would have loved to continue to have her, but she has other plans for life after her teaching, so.
How many years after she was a full-time teacher has she done this?
She was with us for a total of 42 years, and 29 years in some capacity with the district, I believe, then 7 or more, yeah. A long time.
That's great.
We need a motion to.
Motion to
the
accept.
resignations.
Both Miss Weber and Mrs. Trutman. Okay, lump them into one.
Yep.
A second?
So,
Discussion?
for a second.
Discussion? Chris?
Alex?
Yes.
Renee,
Yes.
Brett,
Yes.
Bob,
Yes.
Mike,
Yes.
Di.
Yes.
Anything else before items for next meeting?
If everybody is gonna take a conflict of interest sheet, even if we've signed those in the past, we're gonna renew them this year with new board members coming on. Shouldn't take a whole lot of time, take them with you and get them back to Chris as soon as you can. And then if two of you, president and secretary, would stick around and sign that resolution, that'd be great.
Items for next meeting?
We should have the LEA or the district report card, financial information and whatnot. I hope if I can get that from Brandon, and we should have that updated report card for February's board meeting.
Oh, yeah. Judge with Josh,
Bernie, are you gonna have something for, on the grading side for February?
I will, my plan is to bring, I don't know if it'll be an action item or it'll be at least for discussion point for changes for, grading system, grading reporting system, I guess.
board committee assignments. Anything else?
Obviously,
Building project?
Building project and policy will be on
Brandon,
there.
new
Yes.
hires maybe?
Yeah, personnel.
What is the, what are you guys seeing across the state application wise? I mean,
Low.
still low,
Yeah.
everything trending low. just
I mean,
like-
even right now, I feel like our pool is pretty good, but if you compare that to 10 years ago, it's
And similar,
reduced.
similar to what
I
other districts are
called-
feeling still.
I called a couple principals about a couple people that had applied from other districts to kind of see. And I think ours are better than some people's for sure, and ours are pretty small. I mean, I think we have some quality people in our pool, but I know at least two districts that I talked to that are actively recruiting people for 2 years out because they know there's gonna be some retirements, so there's at least some concerns there.
We were concerned about it, that's why we kind of wanted to get it out.
Get it,
and-
sure.
But it's been a pretty good number of applicants.
I guess I would just add, even though the elementary is obviously not hiring right now, that I think that it's important for us to be like real about the situation, that applicants are low across the board, but also just like kind of a point to point out that like we're still a district where people want to work. You know, so like last year when the elementary was hiring, principals in neighboring districts would call me and be like, what are you doing? Like, I got one applicant, you know, and when I was hiring for the positions we had between 25 and 50. So, you know, we have student teachers that come seek me out and say, hey, you're gonna have openings, you know, so we're a district that people wanna work in, so it's not as hard here as maybe it is in other places sometimes. So, kind of a pat on the back to a lot of people.
Any other items? If not, motion's adjourned.
So move.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thanks, Kate. Mike, did you get secretary?
I guess I did, I just had time.
Plus,
Resolution.
Whenever you're in business.